Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Extra Shift. I am Chris, here as always with Brendon. How are we doing?
Pretty good. It's nice to be back. We intended ideally to record at the end of the second round before the third round started, but life got in the way a little bit. So.
Being paid takes precedence over doing something.
Yeah, it's just the reality of life. But it is episode 207. We're going to talk about the playoffs. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff. But nice to be here.
There's no trivia this week. I'm going to do a double on the next one because I need a lot more time to scramble a 207. This is it's getting tricky. Every other sport, you can find pages where they go through the sport by the numbers, and there's like up to 1,000 of all of these weird stats. The NHL doesn't have that, so you've got to go dig through them yourself. And I'm trying really hard to just not make it every week the next person on the assist list. So I'm working really hard on trying to actually develop quality because I'm going to go through.
There's certain things that are easy to find and certain things that are really not. There's only so much you can clean off Hockey Reference.
Yeah, and we're getting into the numbers where basically I'm only dealing with Wayne Gretzky, Jaromir Jagr.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with 5 players. So it's about making sure that I've got I'm going to start doing team stats and things like that. That's the other thing that's going to happen as well. Now, in terms of jersey numbers, we always talk about this. So obviously, we're dealing. We loop back around to number 7.
We're still kind of in the defenseman numbers. I had a quick peek through the numbers, and the only player currently still in playoff contention in this list is Dmitry Kulikov.
Okay, so you've got obviously, there's some really obvious sort of people that you look at. Phil Esposito probably being the main one. But for me, New York Rangers fans screaming at me about Rod Gilbert as well. And yes, I agree. But for me, my favorite one of these is that we get Yaroslav Bednar, Jared Bednar's non-union European equivalent, who played 1 year for the Kings in 2002. So there you go. So there's a little bit of trivia for you. You've got
Paul Coffey on the Oilers here. I feel like that's the playoff link. I put up. I had an Oilers jersey that I got given as a gift. So
who's Paul Coffey? He can't be that good.
Yeah, no. Who knows?
I'm just doubling down on my enraging Oilers fans at this point because I briefly went with them in the last series for reasons, and now I'm back to I still think they're a bit shit. And we are going to talk about that because I did promise when somebody in the group yesterday was talking about the fact that is this going to end they're not a very good team, and I'm like, no, it's not going to end that conversation.
The thing for me is and we'll get to it when we talk about the current series that is still ongoing. But sometimes you can be a bit shit and get by on the individual efforts of certain players. That's happened for me for the Penguins before. They won a cup when they were a bit shit. And
I haven't said in any way, shape, or form that I don't think that it's I think it's impossible.
Yeah.
The cup, they could well and truly win the cup, but I'm also not going to back down on my position, and I will explain it when we get to that point. But in the meantime, we have a trade to announce. I think you're going to want to hear it. And literally, okay, so this came out of nowhere. Teams can make trades. There's one trade that happened earlier this week we'll talk about in a minute because it's a really interesting trade. But the one from today, so the Islanders receive the 2024 first, pick 20, a 2024 second, pick 54, and a 2024 second, pick 61 from Chicago for 18 and 50.
So now, basically, Chicago moves 2 places in exchange for moving a couple of second round picks for another second round pick. So basically, just a couple of slots up for Chicago, which is an interesting thought exercise in terms of what we're going to do.
Yeah. So my question is, and this is sort of we were talking just before we started, but what the hell are they after? Now, my suggestion was I don't think they've moved up to pick someone at 18. I think they might want to move up and get 2 picks inside the top 10. And if that's the case, maybe whoever they were trading with was like, we need one of these picks to be inside the top 20. So they've moved to 18.
It could be. I mean, I guess we'll see whether there's another shoe to drop with this one. And we might not know until draft day on that because probably they've got someone in mind that they want to draft, and
Yeah.
it's going to depend on whether they think that they can get them around about the picks that they have. So what we know about this draft at this point in time is that the consensus is that after about 15 or 16 or so, like, the quality kind of drops off a little bit. So maybe they think that someone will slide, depending on teams. We've seen that plenty of times before with players that maybe don't fit the mold that some teams are after, and they're a little bit smaller, or they're European or whatever, and they slide a little bit further, and maybe they think they can get someone by being
they're European, and Mark Spector thinks they're a bit shit.
Yeah. So it could be something like that, or maybe it is a player that they think they can get at 18, or maybe they'll on the day decide, like, oh, actually we think that maybe we'll have to move up a couple more or whatever. Who knows?
Well, I mean, I talked about the idea the other day that I thought that there is an outside chance that San Jose try to move the Pittsburgh pick and pair that with other things to try to move themselves up a little bit higher as well. Because again, like, obviously, the only team that's absolutely set in what they're doing is us. Like, we are the only team that knows exactly what we're doing, but we don't know what we're doing with the second pick yet. We do know what we're doing, obviously, with Macklin Celebrini. But after that, there's a sort of a consensus of the next three players, but no order. Although there are a couple of, like, defensemen who feel there's all this talk that they're going to jump from, like, mid-teens into, like, the higher picks because they're big, and GMs love big defensemen regardless of if they necessarily think they're skillful or not. So there's some talk that San Jose might have been trying to move up there. This could be the same thing here, where Chicago go, look, we can kickstart this a little bit faster if we jump back up again and maybe try to get ourselves to 6 or 7, or at least give themselves the horses, especially if they think that maybe that, and because the teams are in a similar spot, I wonder if they're looking at San Jose and going, maybe San Jose is going to jump. We need to get the horses to make sure that we can jump if we need to as well. We don't want to let them get too far ahead. It's fascinating. I don't see why you'd move 2 seconds and a first to move up one spot if you're Chicago, who has all these assets. Like, surely if you wanted to just jump and sit, you'd find someone to trade higher with, because Chicago has the assets to move.
It's interesting because I think if Pittsburgh still had that pick 14 that's with San Jose now, like, this is Kyle Dubas written all over it to move back for a few more picks.
Yeah, this would feel very much like Dubas would be all over this trade.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's an interesting one. The other one, which is an interesting one, was earlier this week, Tampa, because of course once teams are eliminated, you can trade. Tampa acquired Ryan McDonough back and a 2024 fourth from Nashville for a 2025 second and a 2024 seventh. This is really, really interesting. And the main reason why this is really, really interesting has a lot to do for me with Steven Stamkos.
Yeah, so, I mean, like, Tampa were already in a position where it was questionable whether or not they had the cap space to re-sign Stamkos, and basically a whole bunch of positions moving forward. They have a bit of a crunch with some of the contracts that they have. So to go and acquire all $6.75 million of Ryan McDonough's contract, they're quoted as saying that they didn't want to move him away in the first place. They didn't to stay there, but they needed the cap space at the time, and obviously, I can understand the fit for them, but I think it's more telling what it says about their future plans for re-signing players.
Well, it's going to be, look, they do have room. I'm going to say it straight up. They have space. I think it definitely means that the Matt Dumba experiment is over.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't think Dahan or Dumba or Fleury are coming by.
No. But they do have next season. They have $23 million in cap space, but they're also dropping Duclair, Tyler Mott, Stamkos, Austin Watson, then again Dahan, Dumba, Fleury. They've got to sign at least one, probably one more defenseman, even though they've got like the bare minimum there. And I know people go, "What about the pool?" They don't really have a pool as such. They're Tampa. They've traded the pool away to win. They've got to fill the back end of that roster, and they've got to they could bring Stamkos back on a cheap deal. That's still very much in play, but it does feel like a move where you're like, we're not particularly worried about the cap number for Stamkos. So either he's agreed to take almost nothing already, or you're moving off because you know that someone's going to make him a bigger offer, and you're like, well, we're just going to move on.
Yeah, I mean, look, I will say that it's not like 34-year-old Stamkos is due like a massive raise or anything like that.
Yeah, but there are teams that will pay him a massive raise.
Yeah, you could potentially argue that he took a little bit less previously. It could end up being an Ovi situation where they give him like a here's your back pay on a long-term deal that he's going to be regretful towards the end of it. But
next year's Hedman, that's going to be interesting too. Next year's Hedman.
I mean, I guess it's a matter of whether they can sell him on like, hey, we're still competing here. Come back for a few years at a cheap rate. We'll kind of do this as like a Bergeron kind of thing.
I feel like we're going to hear a lot about Seattle and Utah in the next few weeks. I think that Seattle and Utah are going to be in on everybody. Like when we're talking Mana, for example, I think Seattle and Utah are going to be on the phone immediately. I think the same thing going right. If Seattle and Utah haven't already tentatively reached out to Stamkos and gone, hey, interested? Like, I'd be surprised. I think that those are the two teams in particular that are going to try to kickstart a lot of these bidding wars going on here because they've got the room and they've got the need, right, in terms of both of them would like a marquee. Both of them would like a big name with proven track record experience who's still pretty good to get them that more traction that they need, because both of those teams have watched Vegas win a cup and gone, well, Utah wants to make a splash. Seattle is going, well, Vegas has already by this point, they'd already made a final, which is an unrealistic expectation for an expansion. But, now we're in that reality where we'll come into the league, make the final. So I think both of those teams are going to try to make a big splash. And I think that Stamkos and Mana are going to be the two they're chasing. Both of them. It'll be really interesting.
You were looking before, you were saying something about 23 million. I don't think that's true. I think you might not have realized that Cap Friendly's already rolled for the year. They have
already rolled. I'm right. Sorry about that. It's 5 million.
Yeah,
I forgot about
they only have about 5 million. So I think it is more interesting. It really depends on whether or not they can, because they need with that to maybe fill about 3 slots. They've got the goalies locked up. They have the core defensemen locked up. They probably need to slot in like one more.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to do Stamkos.
And they need a couple of forwards. So basically they need to fit about 3 slots in 5 million.
They can't, even if Stamkos takes a pay cut, they can't do Stamkos on that.
Yeah, I mean, even Stamkos would have to take like 3 million basically to make that work.
Even then, that'd be pushing it.
Yeah, even then,
everyone else would basically be signing for league min.
Yeah, and then adding basically 2 entry level contracts to the.
I can already hear people yelling out, but they'll put everyone on LTIR. No, they've still got to put a team on the ice. They've still got to put a team out there.
It's interesting because, I mean, look, you could make an argument like, oh, they'll move this player or they'll move this player or whatever. But then, like, if you were going to do that, why did you just acquire 2 years of $6.75 million of Ryan McDonough? Like, they had that space previously. They could have given Stamkos, 8 or 9 million if they wanted to. If that was the quite like, I feel like this is kind of a nail in the coffin for that.
Yeah, I forgot. I was sitting there before we started. I looked it up and I'd gone, no, they can't afford Stamkos. Then I looked and went, 23 million. Oh, they can't afford it.
Next year, like they could bring it back.
But, I forget they roll the numbers early. Yeah, no, they're screwed. I was right. They are screwed. So what's interesting part about this, before we move on, we're about to move on, but Stamkos is going to be part of something I'm going to be doing in between our pods. So I'm going to I'll talk about it here and then I'll put it out on the socials as well. I'm going to do a little mini series thing called Pitch It. And basically what this is everyone always talks about, whenever we talk about Mana, for example, you'll get, trade him, you can't win a Mana trade, or Stamkos. Oh,
trading for nothing. Trading for
everyone wants Stamkos. Oh, we'll take Stamkos. Okay, prove it. My thing is, what we're going to do is I'm going to start with, I'll put the dates out on all the socials this afternoon. But basically what I want to see is we're going to start with Mana and we'll work from there. Go to Cap Friendly, pitch your Mana trade. Realistic Mana trade. Don't want fantasy. Don't want they can't fit him under the cap. Don't want any of that crap.
Something like really that makes sense for both teams.
Well, that's why it's cap friendly too, because cap friendly will tell you if the deal works or not. So,
and I feel like the harder part of like what people don't realize in terms of pitching trades is that like so many like HF board trades are like, like bring in this guy and this guy and this guy, and it's just like, so why does the other team do that?
Yeah, why would they do that?
Yeah,
like if you're, for example,
if you're sense for the Leafs, but why would that make sense for anyone else?
If you're doing a Marner trade and you're a Leafs fan and you go Mitch Marner, and then you go, for example, and you went, I'm going to send Mitch Marner to, don't worry about the money. I'm going to send Mitch Marner to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and in return, I'm going to send Sergachev, and Vasilevsky and a third.
Yeah.
That trade works, and like, no, it doesn't, because if I'm Tampa, I'm going, no.
Yeah.
So
why would I do that? Why does that make me better?
The trade needs to make sense for everybody. And you can give me a logic when you send me the thing from Cap Friendly. You can give me the logic explaining why that trade is the one you'd make. But it's only been a mini series. But I just want to get everyone's stuff together and like go through them. Why would you make that Marner trade? How would you make that Marner trade work? The next one's going to be Steven Stamkos to free agency. And I want you to pitch me where Stamkos goes, why Stamkos goes, and how much. So they're going to be the first two. We're going to start with Marner.
Like, I don't want this to be like this. Absolutely has to be something that could 100% happen. They can be a little silly, but like it should at least.
It's going to be vaguely realistic. Like Steven Stamkos going to the Leafs for league minimum. No.
Yeah.
And I'm using the Leafs because, to be blunt, your trades are the ones that are really dumb.
Every fan base has some terrible trade suggestions. If you go on like a HF boards, the
HF board, but never look at HF boards. Fantastic. Never look at HF boards. No. HF boards believe that Connor McDavid is going for a conditional 7th.
Yeah. I used to look around there every now and then for like, and I still occasionally look for like prospect information when I'm looking into particular prospects, because there's a bunch of guys on there that have been like scouting guys for like forever, and there'll be a thread on someone but like everyone has like expectation of upside. That's like, oh, this guy, he's like 14 in Russia or whatever, he's going to be the next Kucherov, and this is like, yeah, probably not, but it's interesting to see some discussion about it.
All right, let's get into the coaches and GM hiring and firings now. So let's start with the big one. Scott Arnell appointed head coach of the Winnipeg Jets. So Jets
yeah,
Nation,
they came out this morning, previous assistant coach. It kind of, I saw a lot of, reaction from Jets fans about this, of just being incredibly underwhelmed about the whole thing. But
what were you expecting?
Yeah, I get it. I still don't really kind of know, firstly, who the Jets think they are and who Jets fans think they are at this point in time, because, they kind of had this, surprisingly good season out of nowhere. And I think that probably, but based on that, some fans had this expectation that they were going to start competing now. They were going to bring in like a big name coach and start competing and making picture. I think this probably kind of shows them that they're like, yeah, we're just going to stay the course and see what happens.
Yeah, I think, I realistically, I think it's really interesting that the coaching merry-go-round. At the moment, it's about making sure you've got someone in the seat when the merry-go-round stops. And one of the things that I talked about, one of the things I talked about a little bit previously as well, and we'll talk about it in a moment with Berube, is that I think part of the reason the Leafs settled on Berube is, well, who else is out there? And
yeah, I think actually the last time that we talked, Sheldon Keefe hadn't technically been fired at that point in time.
No, we talked about the fact, and we'll get into Berube and Keefe in a minute, but we talked about the fact that Keefe's getting fired. It's probably Berube, because that's what they're talking about.
Yeah, it felt like that was a kind of wrong.
But it's got on, like, for example, like when the wheel stops on Winnipeg, like it's a harder job to get free agents to go to Winnipeg.
Yeah.
It's a harder job to get coaches to go to Winnipeg. Like, it's not a destination. I know there'll be Jets fans, and Shuck, and already hear Shannon screaming at me about, no, people want to play. No, they don't. People don't want to play.
He wasn't going to go to Winnipeg, that's the reality.
Winnipeg, as I mentioned all the time, Winnipeg is still having a hard time selling their arena out, and they're winning, and they can't sell the arena out. So there's big issues they've got to address there. So they've going on that. Like, that's kind of the move they had to make for a bit of continuity. Jim, we'll go through the minor ones before we get into the big ones. So Jim Hillier has the interim tag removed, and he's now head coach in LA. Some suggestion there that means that Sturm was out on that one, which would indicate that maybe San Jose is moving in on Sturm. I don't want that. I still want Ryan Wasowski there, and he has interviewed. But again, that was very underwhelming from everybody within LA was like, okay, fine. So I'm really interested. I'm interested to see how that goes in LA. Don't know really. I don't know where that's going to go. LA's in a really weird spot because they're sort of on the precipice of being good, not great, but good, in a division that's a bit crap. But they've got some decisions to make. Right? They've got to work out what they think of Quentin Byfield, and I don't know if they know what they think of Quentin Byfield yet. I don't think they're convinced, but I also don't think they want to move on. So like LA's got a lot of tough calls to make coming up. I don't know what they're going to be. So that's a really interesting hire for LA. And I am intrigued. We said there's not many people out there, but I am intrigued about the fact that LA didn't go out to try to get a bigger name. Like there are a couple that are out there that you could have hired. The fact they didn't go for one of them.
Yeah, I think that probably it says that they're happy with the improvements that they've made, the kind of trajectory that they're on, and the kind of system that they're playing and stuff, and didn't want to kind of potentially shake that up for no reason. I think the hard thing with a coaching change is that it's a real kind of mixed bag sometimes for players and for the team and for so forth. Like when unless some things are just really not going well with the way the team is playing, it can be a bit of a gamble to change coach and potentially harpoon the next season by mixing up with a completely different system, and it's all of a sudden, this player doesn't work in this system. All of a sudden, you've just created a whole bunch of new problems.
So yeah, it's what we talked about with San Jose about the getting rid of the coach when you don't really have a plan. Like, have a plan. I don't think that Jim Hiller was a plan. I think they've just sort of decided they've got to go with it now. There is a suggestion. I'm checking up to see if there was anything else on the San Jose job. And there's, again, apparently Marco Sturm and Mike Greer have met again. So that feels like that's the direction that's going. Again, I want Ryan Wasowski, but anyway, we'll come back to that later. Let's get into the couple of big ones. So let's go to Carolina because the last two are linked. So Carolina re-signed Rod Brind'Amour to a multi-year contract extension, silencing everyone who was like, they won't pay him. Yeah, they did. Of course they paid Rod Brind'Amour. He is the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Like he's the franchise.
Yeah, they weren't going to make it. I mean, look, there's an argument to be made that they just, lost in the playoffs in the same way that they have for the past few years, and nothing's changing in terms of their system and the deficiencies and so forth that are in the team and that kind of thing. Like, I think that there's an argument to be made that they should go in a different direction, but I think that they did make some improvements to that, bringing in Gensel, bringing in, some of these different kind of looks. I think that actually kind of gave them a better chance. It didn't change the end result, but like the Hurricanes for a while have really been all about process over result. I think that they're somewhat right in that eventually, if they keep doing things the right way, then they'll end up with better results. But,
we talk about people being goalied. But they also ran into an Igor Shesterkin who remembered who he was.
I mean, that is kind of always what happens with Carolina, but it doesn't take anything away from the fact that they basically faced off against the best goalie in the playoffs, and that's what happened.
Exactly. So the more interesting one, however, and the one that I know that Brendon is absolutely thrilled with, John Waddell resigned as president and general manager, and Eric Tulsky has finally moved up. He's interim at the moment, interim general manager. But come on, we all know everybody.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that they've known that this was going to happen for some time, because Tulsky has interviewed for GM positions in a bunch of different places, and I suspect that Carolina have been telling him for a while, it's all right. Waddell's going to retire in the next few years. You'll eventually get this position. Tulsky, for those who don't know, came up through the hockey analytics department of Carolina, was made his way to management in that, and then eventually just recently became the assistant general manager in Carolina. He was from the sounds of it, the second choice in Pittsburgh, if they couldn't get the big fish that they wanted there. But I wonder, how many in the last few things that he's, his name has been in the list for, have Carolina been assuring him, like, if you stick it out here where you've been for a long time and your house is and all this kind of stuff, you'll eventually get to general manager. I don't expect a heap to change in terms of the way that Carolina does business, but I don't really know the internals of how many decisions Tulsky was really able to make versus Waddell, and I'm curious to see if there's a shift in their logic going forward now that he's like the man in the chair.
Yeah, I think it was an absolute no-brainer. Absolute no-brainer that they needed to get Tulsky in that chair. I was reading all the comments from Hurricanes fans under the post about, Eric Tulsky is currently interim general manager while the search is underway. And most of the comments were, don't even let Eric out of the building.
Yeah. I think he'll end up as
Oh, yeah, I think everyone knows. They've got to do the search, but everyone knows that Eric Tulsky is the general manager of Carolina. The interesting bit for me now is Don Waddell has jumped into what is one of the more fascinatingly, under-the-radar fascinating general manager searches, and I'm referring to the Columbus Blue Jackets, because Waddell has apparently already been has permission and has been interviewed by them. Their search is wild. Have you seen the names that have interviewed for Columbus?
I haven't really. I haven't been paying attention to it.
So Columbus has apparently gone through I think they've basically asked every Canadian general manager that's been fired previously, including everyone's favorite former general manager of Les Canadiens, has...
Oh, yes, I did see that.
Yes,
one, yeah.
He has walked in the door and been interviewed. Also, Vancouver fans, good news, because Bim Jennings might be back in the league too, because Bim Jennings apparently is... they've spoken to everybody, right? They're speaking to everybody. Look, if Columbus is vaguely serious, they hire Don Waddell and just stabilize the position for a couple of years, and don't go and look at... I wouldn't go to the other ones. If Don Waddell wants your job, take Don Waddell and just let him settle everything down. Because if you've then got a front office of John Davidson and Don Waddell, it feels in Columbus like the adults have control for a bit.
Yeah.
And it just feels like Columbus just need adults for 5 minutes to just sort of go, everyone take a breath. You've got this. Just let us make some moves. And you need somebody who feels like they're in charge. So I think having those two there would be a good move. I would be interested to see how Don Waddell and him could work together, though. That Davidson and Waddell together could be power. It was an interesting dynamic. But let's get to the big one that everyone wants to talk about. So the double whammy. So first of all, the Toronto Maple Leafs named Craig Berube as their new head coach in a move that shocked everybody in the league because nobody knew that was coming. It wasn't like it was being reported before Sheldon had been fired. And Sheldon Keefe has then been hired as the new coach of the New Jersey Devils. He tweeted, by the way, speak of the devil, looking forward to the job. And well done, Sheldon, well done. Now, I'll start with
for him in terms of teams that had available.
I'll start with the Sheldon Keefe. Yeah, start with the Sheldon Keefe part of this. I think it's an absolutely perfect fit. And I think that Sheldon Keefe is going to be really damn good in New Jersey. I think, look at the roster that he's got. Look at what he's working with. That team's going to be really good. Him coaching him coaching Hughes's.
Look, I think we all expected bigger things from New Jersey. Me especially, who picked them to be a really good team this year, and it obviously didn't kind of pan out. But I think that sooner or later things are going to click there, and they're going to be a powerhouse. Yeah,
I think that Sheldon's a really good fit. They did point out again his ability to work and develop young players was a plus. And look, it's going to be absolutely hilarious if he goes to New Jersey and wins a cup. It's going to be so funny. But let's talk about Toronto and Craig Berube. So the last week has been full of everybody talking up why Craig Berube got this job. And, accountability is the number one thing. And all he talked about was accountability at his press conference. And all you've heard from everybody talking about Craig Berube was accountability. I did think it was really interesting that Brad Treliving went out of his way to say that Sheldon Keefe wasn't a bad coach. Sheldon Keefe was actually a very good coach and done a very good job. You just need a different voice at this point in time. It's it was really weird that he went out of his way to make it very plain to everyone that it wasn't because Sheldon Keefe was terrible at his job.
I feel like this is especially true for Leafs fans, but it's true of really any fan base that every player on your roster sucks and needs to get traded away for nothing, but also all of them can be saved by a coach coming in and yelling at them. Like I think that's the that's the logic behind a lot of fans is that so long as this guy who comes in and says mean things to them and makes them accountable when they make mistakes or whatever, that does these things or whatever, then they'll be great. But also, I look forward to him sending
Nylander to the AHL because he wouldn't back check. Can't wait.
These are professional athletes. They know when they do things wrong. They know the mistakes are being made. That some of them maybe have some personality issues and so forth. But like I think the argument that some hard ass can come in and whip them all into shape and all of a sudden they'll play great or whatever is just not realistic.
I think the likely bigger thing that's going to happen if Toronto's successful this year, I think the more likely thing's going to be they're looking like they're going to trade Mitch Marner, they're going to bring in a goalie, and they're probably going to trade for a top line defenseman. Like that's probably going to be the thing that if they get over the line, changes it. Rather than Craig Berube came in and was mean. It's far more like
he said some mean things to some people who weren't
because like they were talking to players from his time in St. Louis, and they said, "What did he change when he came into St. Louis?" And like he didn't do anything tactically. We just kept playing what we were playing. Like it was just a different voice, and he was accountability. And so I don't think he's going to necessarily change the play style in Toronto. I think it's just going to be.
Yeah, look, I think there's definitely a mental aspect to the performance of teams and so forth, and sometimes just that change in situation can be helpful anyway. Just having someone new and having a reset for players that might be helpful regardless of the way that he goes about things. Yeah. But I don't think the answer is just that he's going to make a couple of players who aren't trying hard accountable and that's going to fix it. No,
I think they're going to get a goalie. I think they're going to go out and find themselves a defenseman because I like Morgan Riley as a player, but he's not your number one. And I think they'll probably they'll move off the Marner contract. They'll move all of those things out there. They'll make the adjustments that they should have made last season when Kyle Dubas flagged maybe we need to make an adjustment and got fired. They'll make those adjustments. The roster will probably be a little bit better balanced, and therefore they're in a better position. And so that's more likely to be the thing than Craig Berube yelled at us. Now, it's going to be interesting too, because I think they've set it up so that if things go badly, it won't be Berube's fault. It'll be the players just aren't tough enough. And I think that we're entering a really interesting situation for me in Toronto, because I think there's going to be a lot of this trying to sell the idea that Berube's the solution to everything. And if things don't work, it's the players aren't tough enough for Craig Berube. And I can't wait to see. Look, we know that the uncles like yelling at Nylander. He's going to be the one. I will guarantee he's the one.
I mean, look, they're running out of like softness excuses, really. Like they've fired the analytics, GM, and they've brought in Treliving. They fired the soft coach, and they've brought in Berube. They've brought in Reeves and Domi and all of these kind of guys.
By the way, there's apparently a lot of
rid of Marner. Like they're going to very soon be completely out of scapegoats.
Well, the rumor this morning as well is that even though they're up against the cap, and all the talk was that one of the things they're trying to do is shed cap, so they've got cap space. They're apparently also working on long-term extensions for both Domi and Bertuzzi, which
they do have quite a bit of space.
But once you do Domi and Bertuzzi, like if they're going to get long-term, they're going to get money.
And I mean, they shouldn't. This is the thing is like I think that the reality of that market and the reality of the mystique that's been made about these kind of players is that they are probably going to get some stupid $6 million contract or whatever, and then when they probably should be on like 3 or 4. But that's kind of you kind of talk yourself into it by making these guys the savior of your franchise.
Yeah, and that's look. I think again we'll move off this now because I want to do a lot of the minor stuff in Pitch It later on this week. So as I said, for people just joining in, I'm going to do a series called Pitch It. The first thing I'm going to do is pitch me a Mitch Marner trade that works for both sides. So let's move on. It's awards time. It's awards season. Right in time for Vancouver to have been eliminated from the playoffs. Rick Tocchet wins to Jack Adams for the team with, as you put it, the highest PDO. Also with a goalie that remembered he was really good.
That tends to be how it works. The team that ends up with an absurd save percentage and a high shooting percentage and outperforms their expectations.
Can I just point out in the voting for the Jack Adams, the fact that Peter Laviolette did not get into the top 3 is ridiculous.
That's fair. I mean, considering the fact that they ended up, with as many points as they did, and the present struggle, you would think it really should kind of come into the equation sometimes when a team that was expected to be good is good. But,
also, my other question is, how does Chris Knobloch get 5th over Paul Maurice and Spencer Carberry and Rod Brindamore?
Well, this is the thing, really. Like, if you look at the top 3 in voting for the Jack Adams, are all 3 teams that outperformed their expectations. It's Vancouver, Nashville, and Winnipeg. That is really just kind of what this whole thing is saying, is that we expected this team to be shit, but they weren't shit this year. So therefore it must have been the coach. And then after that, you get into actual kind of, teams like, New York and then you say Edmonton and Florida, et cetera, et cetera. But there's some in here that are just ridiculous, like Washington, who made the playoffs accidentally despite sucking, and the fact that John Tortorella and Mike Sullivan got votes in this is just stupid in itself.
Peter DeBoer in 10th.
Yeah,
the one for me, the Knobloch thing for me is, so Edmonton deeply underperformed at the start of the season, but what actually happened? Yes, they moved to Chris Knobloch, but what's the more important thing? Connor McDavid got healthy.
Yeah.
He was broken for the first third of the season. And everyone could see McDavid was broken for the first third of the season. They sacked the coach. They brought in Chris Knobloch. They then performed to expectations because Connor McDavid was no longer injured. Chris Knobloch is apparently the 5th best coach in the league this year.
It's ridiculous. I mean, look, this isn't to say that a lot of these coaches didn't do good jobs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure that, a bunch of these coaches also did well. But if you want to be truthful about this isn't really what this is like the team that was supposed to be bad ended up being good, and we've decided that must be the coach.
Okay, speaking of ridiculous awards, let's get to my favorite award of the year.
Yeah.
Jacob Trouba wins the Mark Messier Likes You award.
Yeah.
Look, we rail against this award every damn year, and I will once again point out, how the hell does Mark Messier have an award and Wayne fucking Gretzky does not? Seriously, Mark has always been a master politician in the NHL, and this is the most masterful bit of work I think I've ever seen. The fact that every year it's the leadership award, and they just go to Mark Messier, who do you like? And he goes, that guy. And they go, cool, and give him a trophy.
Yeah. You can't show anyone the voting for that because it's one vote and it's Mark's vote. That's all.
Mark woke up in the morning and went, him.
You know what? I like this guy that tried to decapitate someone this year. That was fucking fantastic.
Like this guy because he plays tough. He plays tough Rangers hockey.
It's fucking ridiculous. They need to get rid of this stupid fucking award.
They do. And again, how hard is it to rename? Again, I've maintained the whole way along, and I understand the background of it. But how have you not renamed the Hart the Gretzky? How?
I feel like probably at some point in time with the origin story of the Mark Messier Award is probably that they were trying to get him involved with a bunch of stuff, and someone pitched this idea and they went with it, not really thinking it through, thinking maybe we'll do this for a few years, and then they got stuck with it forever, and it's just this thing that they have to keep doing until Mark fucking dies.
Yeah. I think they'll continue it afterwards. It'll be the Mark Messier Memorial Award.
Yeah, it'll be someone else will, his kids.
There'll be a seance. There'll be a seance every year. They'll get a seance together. They'll get a Ouija board up. Right, ready, Mark? Who do you like?
Mark has got a diary of the next 30 years of his picks.
He's already pre-written them. And if there's no names, he's just written down criteria. Good Canadian kid.
It'll just be. It'll be like we found like it'll be a whole like Mormon like book of thing where we found this book buried behind Mark's house with picks for the next 50 years. We don't. Some of these players haven't been born yet, but Mark's made picks on who's going to win the award.
He's done it all. And Alex Barkov wins the Selkie in a move that should be surprising to not a single person in the NHL. That's easy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the top of the voting for that was interesting. Jordan Stahl, comes in like a distant second, just in front of Austin Matthews, who I think makes sense to be a candidate for this. But nice to see Reinhardt and Kopitar and the kind of some of these guys. I feel like at this point in time, like as good as like Sidney Crosby is, I feel like he's starting to get some like retroactive kind of legacy votes for.
You're starting to get that vote of he's a really it's starting to be from he's really good, and starting to be he's good for his age, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean it's not that he's bad, but I don't think that at any point in time Crosby.
No, I think he's still great.
But like I think that the problem is that people get down to like fourth place on their voting form and then kind of go, I don't know, give it to Crosby. That's why he has 12 fourth place votes, because like they're like, I don't know after this. Crosby, that's a safe pick.
It's also really interesting that Matthews came third and Reinhardt came fourth, but Reinhardt had more first place votes, which is really interesting to me. All right, moving on. Let's talk about the playoffs, which we were going to recap up, as we said, but needs must. Let's start with the West this time because we always start with the East. Let's start with the West. I'm going to start with Vancouver versus Edmonton. Now, we both said that this should be an absolute walkover for the Oilers, and it was not. You can argue that maybe if Besser's not out, could potentially go a completely.
It's an interesting one that, very back and forth series. I think that it felt like Vancouver, once they got 3-2 up, like had a somewhat of a tap in. Like I felt like, okay, well, as much as it's not it's not like a necessity that like they're going to win the one of the next two. They had a good chance at that point.
You know what their problem was? Not enough Saskatchewan. Too much Sweden. Not
that's
enough.
Right. Clearly, that's what it is.
Mark Spector had a week, folks. Mark Spector had a week. But yeah, I was disappointed in the way this series finished, and also
I think the game 7 was a letdown.
The narrative coming out of it, I think, is once again an example of how you can create whatever you want in narrative, where they've talked about how amazing in the last 2 games Stuart Skinner was. Vancouver didn't shoot. In 2 games, Vancouver didn't shoot. Like, he faced almost nothing in the last 2 games. Like, he stopped it, but like I think it was one of the comments. I think it might have been Wyshynski after Game 7 went, "You're not going to have a situation where Stuart Skinner going forward is going to have many 19-shot shutouts." And that's a Game 7. It's not good enough. Like. Vancouver's whole idea was very rope-a-dope, and it was like, wouldn't let them punch, which is a strategy and a good strategy against Edmonton. But the follow-up to that is you then have to go up the other end and shoot.
Yeah, they just didn't give themselves a chance to win, really, realistically. Like, it was looking like a 3-0 shutout until they, turned up in the third period. Like, the reality is you can't just kind of sit back for 2 periods and hope to win a game.
and look, we'll talk a little bit more obviously when we talk about sort of preview / reflecting on the first game. But yeah, there was a comment in the group. I'll talk about it now. So there was a comment in the group yesterday after they won the first game of the Western Conference Final this should stop everybody talking about the fact that they're not a good team and they're not a good team and this should stop all that garbage. No, they're not a good team. I'm going to say it straight up. Can they win the cup? You better believe they can win the cup, right? Are they a team that is better than Dallas? No, they are not better than Dallas. Are they better than Colorado? They are not better than Colorado. I will tell you, I do not believe that for a second.
In terms of roster construction, that makes
what they are is we are dealing with, and I can't remember who it was yesterday, but somebody put it really well. We are dealing with a deep constructed roster versus the 2 best players in the league.
Yeah.
And what we are dealing with is a situation where It is going to be Dallas's depth at all areas versus can McDavid, Draisaitl, and one of Zach Hyman or Evan Bouchard. Either one, it won't be both together, but either one, can they overcome Dallas's combined mass? That's the question mark. Now, yesterday, everyone goes, look, they're a good team. They're a great team. The Edmonton Oilers are 6-0 in the playoffs if Connor McDavid scores twice. Simple. The answer is Connor McDavid played well yesterday. Draisaitl had a good game yesterday. Evan Bouchard played really well yesterday. Right? Those three players got them over the line. Skinner had a good game. I don't think it's going to necessarily maintain like that. He's not a world-class goalie, regardless of how that yesterday went. Good first game, though. But I feel like if Dallas can shake the confidence there and get in behind and get a couple of goals on him, I think Skinner's likely to fall apart again. The question mark over the next series, and my question mark over Edmonton is they are highly talented. They have the two best players in the league. Is that enough to win a cup?
I mean, it can be. This is the thing. Like
they can win quite easily, but I don't believe they're a good team.
You usually need a pretty Herculean goalie performance too, and whether or not Stuart Skinner is capable of that, whether or not he can hold out against the onslaught of Dallas's offense is really the question for me. I think I wouldn't. I'm not leaning that way. I don't think that necessarily he's capable of stealing like a few more games in this series, but it's possible. It's absolutely possible. We've seen a bunch of basically no name goalies go on a hot streak. If he can do it in this series, yeah, absolutely they can win. Yeah, but I would still lean towards Dallas, even though Edmonton won the first game. And
at no point have I said that I don't think they can win the cup. Again, they can win the cup, 100%. Yeah. But the question wasn't, can Edmonton win the cup? The question was, does this stop the argument that they're not a good team? And I don't think it stops that argument, because as long as you've got McDavid and Draisaitl, you've always got the ability to take one away, take two away, take a series away, right? It's the rest of that roster I wouldn't necessarily trust. It's still not a well-built roster. It's not well-constructed. And it relies a lot on McDavid playing nearly 30 a night and doing what he did yesterday. And how sustainable is that long-term? Yeah, we'll find out. We'll find out. Now, the other series was Dallas and Colorado. I think the Nichushkin news that happened during the series probably is the dagger blow to Colorado in that one.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Obviously he's been in and out of the player assistance program and is now, suspended for a significant amount of time, and entering. I think they said that phase 3 or something of that. That program. So that's unfortunate for him. Obviously, there was some controversy around him in the playoffs last year, and it's come back again this year, and hopefully he gets the help that he needs.
But look, Colorado looked decent early, and then Dallas just rolled over them. And, again, I still think that Dallas, I tipped Colorado. Obviously, you tipped Dallas to win it. I tipped Colorado to win everything. So, it was – I think the Avalanche – the other interesting thing with the Avalanche is that I think that Georgiev rebounded against Winnipeg, but then sort of fell apart a bit against Dallas as well. And so I think that net minding might be something that Colorado take a bit of a look at. I think they might be at a point where they decide they can't skimp on that. And so I think that could be, there are a lot of teams that are looking for a goalie. And I think that Colorado might be in that hunt now, and that might be their focus in the offseason is, can they wrangle a big goalie into that lineup?
It would certainly, I think, stabilize that team a lot. They've been getting away with average goaltending for some time, and they won a cup with that. But it would probably help them feel a little bit more confident. Having something a little bit more reliable on the back end. I'm actually interested, to see how similarly the conference final plays out compared to this Avalanche and Stars series, because Colorado won that first game in overtime as well before Dallas really kind of found their legs and just kind of started the engine rolling over them and eventually ended up winning that series in 6. That's kind of how I expect this Edmonton series to go as well. Once they've kind of gotten an idea of what they need to do, what they need to target and stuff, I feel like Dallas are going to kind of roll over them in the same way.
Yeah, I still feel the same thing. And again, can Edmonton do it? You better believe they can. If Connor McDavid and Draisaitl decide that they're just going to do it
out of this world and score at will, yeah.
If they're going to do that, then I think that there's every chance that could possibly happen. But I still think that the more likely scenario here is that Dallas just...
Yeah, my Western Conference final pick at the moment is Dallas in 6.
Yeah, I think I had Dallas. I think I said Dallas in 5, so I don't think it'll be 5 now, but yeah, obviously. Let's go over to the East. So we'll start with Florida and Boston, which was exactly sort of, in fact, if anything, Boston getting 2 was a bit more of a surprise for me.
I did expect it to be a little bit more tilted towards Florida, and they did look like they were going to finish it early at one point in time. Like, once a team goes 3-1 up in the series, it's so hard and so rare to come back from that. You have to be perfect after that because you have to win 3 in a row. The fact that Boston, it's also hard to put away a team that first time you get a chance to. So I did kind of expect Boston to win one more. It was disappointing, I guess, that we didn't get to see them necessarily at full strength. Towards the end of that series, they didn't have Marchand in the last game, who'd been, great early in the series. There's been some injuries and some stuff that's kind of limited their ability. But I think that the reality is it was always going to be difficult for a Boston team whose first line center right now is Pavel Zacha to compete with the depth and the other options and so forth that Florida has. Boston got a lot further this year than I expected, given the players that they lost and the quality that they lost. Props to them for making a run of it. But yeah, I didn't feel like that they were ever going to be a decent chance to win this series.
Yeah, I thought that, look, as we said, Florida is just a better team than Boston. And we said that we thought whoever came out of Boston and Toronto were fighting for the opportunity to be rolled over the top of by Florida.
Yeah.
And look, I think, as we're seeing already in the Eastern Conference final, Florida are going to be a very tricky prospect going forward as well. I think they might have learned some of the lessons from last year. And taken some things on board from last year. So, I think Florida are going to be an example, I think, of learning from the previous season. And I think we're seeing that a little bit already. The last game in this one, if you remember, I picked Carolina in my bracket, but when we were talking about it at the end of the podcast, I said I've sort of changed my mind on that, and I think the Rangers will beat Carolina. And yeah, Rangers 4-2 in the series.
I'm a little disappointed by the way that this one ended, because it really looked like it was going to go 7. Like, similarly to what we talked about in the Bruins and Panthers things, like once you get 3-1 up in a series, it's hard to come back from that, especially, against a team like, the Rangers that we talked about with Shesterkin and the ability to steal a game and so forth. And I think that's kind of what happened in this series, is that the Rangers had incredible performances from Shesterkin in the first 3 games of the series and ended up being up 3-0. And that was kind of the nail in the coffin at that point. Like, once you're up, literally 3-0 in a series, like, the Carolina had to reverse sweep the Rangers, and that was just never going to happen. I think that it was basically over after game 3, but they made it real close. Like, Carolina won the next 2, and they were like spitting distance. They were one period from winning. Yeah, they were one period from forcing a game 7, and at that point in time, I was like, they're going to do it. They're going to come back and they're going to win this series in a reverse sweep. But it was really just a kind of incredible one period from Chris Kreider with a natural hat trick to come back. Yeah. And I think Carolina had like a 3-1 lead going into the third period or something, and they ended up or 3-0, something like that. They ended up losing that game 5-3 entirely on that Kreider performance in that last period.
I think we talk a lot about Shesterkin and the importance of Igor Shesterkin to the Rangers, and everyone knows that. And again, Adam Fox, same thing. But Chris Kreider is and has been now for the last few seasons the Rangers' secret weapon. And it sounds weird to say he's a secret because he's been there forever, but he is. Every year, Chris Kreider is that little X factor that they have, that when they need someone to step up, Kreider does it.
And like they need someone to score like a shorthanded goal that breaks someone's back, or or a tip in or something like that. Definitely. I think that that's that. You look at some of those those X factor players that have qualities that other players don't have, that can do something a little extra that a lot of other players don't have, or whatever. Kreider is definitely that player.
Every year in fantasy, Chris Kreider is my hidden gem point scorer. Like, he gets so much. He gets so many points. Like, I've got Matthews, and Matthews gets unlimited, basically points. He's a cheat code. But Kreider,
but he's not. But for what he's thought of, in terms of the.
Kreider is that one every week. You look down at the list, and like Matthews might have if he has a big week, he's got like 20, 23, 24, 25, 26 points, and Kreider's got 20. And you're like, didn't hear about that.
Yeah, and he got this guy in like the 8th round somewhere, or probably later than that. He fell down into the deep picks. But yeah, look, well done, to the Rangers. I'm a little, I wanted to. I've lost my chance at my bracket working now at this point in time, because obviously I had Carolina winning.
Oh, mine's dead. Mine's dead.
Yeah. I can still have Dallas get to the final, but basically, I really feel like those first few games from Shesterkin basically put the nail in the coffin. The series was dead in the water after Game 3.
My preferred final is Dallas and the Rangers. So congratulations, Florida and Edmonton. I really want a Dallas Rangers final. I think that'd be a really good final.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Rangers and Panthers. So what were your takeaways from Game 1?
That Florida, if they decide they're going to turn it on, can beat anybody, basically. It was an interesting one. The Rangers were flatter than I thought they would be. I didn't anticipate the Rangers to be as flat as they kind of were. And I mean, I don't think in that series, I didn't think that whoever lost the first game was going to be a massive problem. Because I feel like both teams have the ability to win anywhere. Like, the Rangers have the ability to win in Florida, and Florida has the ability to win in New York. So I think that I'm not particularly panicking if I'm a Rangers fan yet, because you feel like, well, if they can split it in New York, great. Even if they go 2-0 down, I still trust the Rangers to be able to win in Florida.
Yeah, I think that there's, it's not a matter of if Shesterkin steals a game in this series. It's a matter of how many games he steals in this series.
Is he able to steal them enough? I still think the Rangers will win the series, but I think it will be incredibly tight. I think I said 6 originally. This could very much go 7. It's going to be an absolute slugfest, though. It's hard hitting.
I'm still leaning towards Florida on this one, but I could absolutely see it going 7. At the moment, I think based on Florida winning the first one, I'll say 6. But I could definitely see it going, to a Game 7 for sure.
Yeah, look, it'll be an interesting series. I still think that the Rangers have shown this year enough that they've got the ability to A, rally back from this, but B, one of the things that I've been really critical of the Rangers in the last few years is the big players don't step up when they're needed to. We've seen a bit more of that this year, although, again, Panarin probably needs to do a little bit more. But, and I know I say that all the time, but he really does. But I think if you get Panarin decides that he's entering the series, Lafreniere's been good. They've had decent support across the roster. So I think that if they get the contributions from those bigger names, I still think they've got the best defenseman in the series in terms of Adam Fox. And obviously, even though Bobrovsky can be Bobrovsky at times, I still would take Igor Shesterkin every day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just feel like there's more ability to get to Bobrovsky than there is to get to Shesterkin. And that's probably, for me, the biggest difference, is that I think if the Rangers can get at Bobrovsky, and we talked about that last year with Florida. Like, when Bobrovsky was hot, part of the issue was they weren't putting pressure on him. And what happened? Eventually, you put the pressure on Bobrovsky and you clean up the rebound. He doesn't clean up the rebounds and you get in on him, you can score. And that's what ended up happening with Florida last year, was you just put that pressure on Bobrovsky and wait for the rebounds to come and take them. And like, that's when Toronto got thumped by Florida. There were rebounds all over the place. Nobody was there to clean them up. And so that's the sort of the pathway through is block his lines, block his line of sight, get in front of him, and be there for the rebounds that are going to come with Bobrovsky. I think there's more of that there than there is on Igor, and that's why I'm sort of still thinking the Rangers can just get over the line there. But it'll be tight. I think it'll be very.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a good series. I'm looking forward to seeing how it pans out.
And just back to the Western series, the reason I'm still happy to take Dallas in that one as well is that, again, knowing DeBoer hockey like I do, one of the things that they didn't really get to yesterday a lot of, and I think they will get back to, is one of the main tenets of DeBoer hockey, which is get in front of the goalie, long bombs from the edge of the area, have Joe Pavelski in front to tip or someone there for a rebound. And if Stuart Skinner, if he doesn't have a clear line of sight, you're going to see those rebounds. And I just think that they will work more on that idea of just get shots on him and get someone in front. And all it's going to take is a couple of tip pucks. And that's sort of why I favor Dallas again. I think they've got that ability to take Skinner's line.
I think that the thing to remember about a series too is that a lot of it is about, adjustments. A lot of it is about over the course of the series, seeing what the other team is doing and finding a way to, to counter that and to play a game that stops trying to, what they're trying to do. And I feel like everyone knows what Edmonton's game plan is. And I think, Dallas has the tools and the depth to be able to counter that. And if they can shut down, at least one of McDavid or Draisaitl, then that's the series basically.
Yeah. So I think we're both. I mean, I'm saying Dallas Rangers. You're saying Dallas Panthers.
Panthers and Stars is my final pick at this point in time.
Okay, so again, congratulations, Edmonton. You're definitely making the final.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked to see Rangers Oilers. Like it's entirely possible. There's a reason these teams are here. I don't think either of these series are going to be a cakewalk.
Look, I don't think you can look at this and go, if anyone made it out, it'd be a surprise.
Yeah, I think that if anything, like this is a great batch of teams that haven't won in a while. We've seen this a bit the last few years. For a while there was about 10 years where it was like Chicago, LA, Pittsburgh. It was like a handful of teams that were just repeating and going back to the Cup. And even just in the batch of teams this year, people would not want to see Vegas back there. People would not see. I think that this is a batch of teams that by and large, haven't been to the Cup final in a significant way in some time, and it will be fun to see win.
So again, remembering that the most recent one of these teams to win was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Right, followed by 30 and then 34.
Yeah,
and Florida is never.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, look, it would be fun to see any of these. Obviously, the Rangers and the Oilers have the longest kind of dynasty collection of wins in terms.
And
look,
for the Rangers, it would make perfect sense. It's the 30th anniversary of 1994. So Mark Messier is giving awards to their captain.
Yeah.
Surely this is we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, look, it'll be really interesting to see. We're definitely getting, though, again, like in this era, we're getting a new winner for this era at least. So
yeah, for sure.
It'll be fascinating to see. So that will do us for this week. Thank you, everyone, for watching, listening, everything else. Again, reminder, if you like this, please share it around. Please tell people about it. Because, again, we've got really good numbers recently. We've got really good feedback on everybody. We really appreciate all of this. I'll be posting in the next day or so about, I said, the idea for Pitch It and putting that out there so people can get some answers in. Remember, I want you to go to Cap Friendly and put together your trades for Mitch Marner. Make sure it makes some vague sense. Again, don't try to...
I'll just start thinking about it. I want to try and come up with one as well.
Go on. I want you to try to work out a trade that involves Mark Edward Vlasic for me. That'd be good. All right, anyway,
you said realistic. It has to be realistic. Right?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Leafs would be desperate for Mark Edward Vlasic. Anyway, that'll do us.
Top pairing defenseman.
And we'll catch you all later.
See ya.